The galaxy had learned to fear the sound of their engines. When the great ships of the hegemony of Kreth appeared in a system, worlds prepared to die. For 3,000 years, they had swept across the stars like a plague of metal and fire. No species had ever stopped them. None had even slowed them down for long. Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge. The massive ship stretched for 15 kilometers, its hull black as the void between stars. Behind him, 300 more ships filled space, each one capable of burning worlds to ash. This was the hegemony's greatest fleet, and Thex Varn was its most feared commander. The bridge crew worked in silence around him. Krethans were tall, thin beings with gray skin that looked like stone. Their eyes glowed a dull red, and their faces never showed emotion. They had perfected the art of conquest through cold calculation and overwhelming force. "Report!" Thex Varn commanded, his voice like grinding rocks. 17 systems have fallen in this cycle, War Conductor, replied his intelligence officer. The Delphinians lasted 4 hours. Their water cities boiled away under our particle cannons. The Rigel clans fought for 3 days, but their warrior traditions meant nothing against our dreadnoughts. Thex Varn nodded. The pattern was always the same. First, they would broadcast the hegemony's terms: total surrender and absorption into their empire or complete destruction. Some species tried to negotiate, others fought immediately. The result was always identical. "What of the Shard Collective?" he asked. The intelligence officer's red eyes flickered. "Most interesting, War Conductor. The crystal mines calculated their odds of victory at 0.003%. Rather than submit to slavery, they chose to shatter themselves. An entire species committed suicide in one moment." "Foolish," Thex Varn said. "They could have served the hegemony for 1,000 years. Instead, they chose nothing." But privately, he felt something like respect for the Shard Collective. It took courage to face extinction rather than bow to conquest. Not that courage mattered in the end. The Krethans had taken their worlds anyway. "Show me our next target," he ordered. The main display shimmered, showing a small yellow star with several planets orbiting it. The third planet glowed blue and green, covered in water and land masses. It looked young and fresh compared to the ancient worlds the hegemony usually conquered. "The Sol system," the intelligence officer reported. "Primary inhabited world is called Earth. The dominant species calls itself human. They achieved spaceflight only 500 years ago." 500 years? Thex Varn almost laughed. The Krethans had been building starships for over 10,000 years. "They are children playing with fire. Our scouts report that humans are divided into multiple nations and factions. They fight among themselves constantly. Their largest warships are barely 800 meters long. By our standards, they would classify as patrol boats." Thex Varn studied the tactical display. Human ships were scattered throughout their system, but most were concentrated around their homeworld. Their technology seemed primitive, using chemical, rockets, and nuclear fusion. They had no particle shields, no quantum cannons, no antimatter cores. "How many ships do they possess?" he asked. "Approximately 1,200 vessels of various sizes. Most appear to be cargo transports or mining ships. Perhaps 50 are true warships." 50 ships against 300. Thex Varn finally allowed himself a cold smile. "This will be the shortest conquest in our history." He turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for the Sol system. We will arrive at their outer planets and offer terms. When they refuse, we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears the hegemony." The massive fleet began to move. Space bent around their ships as they entered hyperspace, traveling faster than light toward the small system that housed humanity. Behind them, the ruins of 17 civilizations drifted in the dark, testament to Krethan power. In hyperspace, Thex Varn reviewed the intelligence reports about humans. They were young as species went, having evolved on their world only recently. They had discovered fire, agriculture, and civilization in rapid succession. Their technology advanced at an unusual pace, but they remained primitively violent, constantly warring with each other over resources and ideology. "War Conductor," his science officer approached. "The human data is curious." "Explain." Most species we encounter have unified governments when they achieve spaceflight. Humans remain divided. They have dozens of separate nations, each with their own military forces. Some human ships bear different markings and appear to serve different masters. Thex Varn considered this. Weakness. They cannot unite even when facing extinction. This will make conquest easier. Perhaps, War Conductor, but our analysis suggests something else. Human history shows constant warfare, but also rapid technological advancement during conflicts. They appear to innovate faster when threatened. All species fight when cornered, Thex Varn dismissed. It changes nothing. The fleet traveled for 3 days through hyperspace. When they finally emerged at the edge of the Sol system, Thex Varn expected to find chaos. Most species panicked when the hegemony fleet appeared. They would broadcast desperate surrender offers or threats they could not back up. Instead, the human system seemed oddly quiet. Scan for human vessels, Thex Varn ordered. War Conductor, I am detecting one ship. It appears to be holding position near the large gas planet. One ship? Thex Varn stared at the tactical display. A single contact appeared on the screen, a small vessel less than a kilometer long. Where are their fleets? Unknown, War Conductor. Long-range sensors show some activity around the inner planets, but most human vessels appear to have withdrawn. Thex Varn felt the first stirring of confusion. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever met the hegemony fleet with a single ship. It was either the height of arrogance or the depth of foolishness. Identify the vessel. Human designation appears to be UNSC Indomitable. It is broadcasting a signal on multiple frequencies. Let me hear it. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A human voice spoke in their primitive language, which the ship's computers translated instantly. The voice was clear, steady, and completely without fear. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command vessel Indomitable. You are entering sovereign human territory. Turn back now, or we will consider your presence an act of war. Silence filled the Crethan bridge. Then Thex Varn began to laugh. It was a sound like stones grinding together, harsh and without humor. The idea was so ridiculous that even his disciplined crew turned to stare. One ship, one tiny ship, was threatening the greatest fleet in galactic history. War Conductor, his tactical officer said carefully. Shall we respond to their demand? Thex Varn wiped his red eyes, still chuckling. No, we will respond with action. Order the frigate Blood of Conquest to destroy that vessel. Make it quick and clean. I want the humans to see what happens to those who threaten the hegemony. What of the main fleet, War Conductor? Continue toward the inner system. This will take only moments. Then we can begin the real conquest. As the hegemony fleet moved deeper into human space, the frigate Blood of Conquest broke formation and accelerated toward the lone human ship. Its weapons began to charge, particle cannons that could crack a moon's surface. Thex Varn watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Soon the human ship would be debris, and its species would learn the price of defying the hegemony. He expected the Indomitable to run or surrender when faced with impossible odds. Instead, the human ship turned toward the approaching frigate and began to accelerate. Its weapons were powering up, preparing for battle. Fascinating, Thex Varn murmured. They actually mean to fight. He settled back to watch the execution of the human vessel, unaware that he was about to witness something that would change his understanding of warfare forever. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UNSC Indomitable, watching death approach in the form of an alien warship. The Crethan frigate was 3 times the size of her vessel and carried weapons that could turn planets into glass. She had 1,200 crew members under her command and orders to observe and report on any alien contact. She was about to disobey those orders completely. Captain, her tactical officer called out, the alien vessel is charging weapons. Estimated. Time to weapons range, 4 minutes. Elena nodded calmly. She had studied the sensor readings of the massive alien fleet. 300 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The main human fleet was 3 days away, returning from a campaign at Proxima Centauri. Earth's defense forces were scattered across the system. Nowhere near ready for this kind of assault. Communications, open a channel to Earth Command. Channel open, Captain. This is Indomitable. We have made contact with a hostile alien fleet of approximately 300 vessels. They have sent one ship to engage us. I am transmitting all sensor data now. Tell Admiral Chen that the wolves are at the door, and someone needs to hold them off." She closed the channel and turned to her crew. Every face on the bridge showed the same mixture of fear and determination. They all knew the odds. They all knew they were about to die. "Captain." Her first officer, Commander Marcus Chen, spoke quietly. "We could withdraw, live to fight another day." Elena looked at him with something like affection. Marcus was a good officer and a better friend. He deserved to see his children grow up. They all deserved better than this. "Marcus, if we run, that alien fleet reaches Earth in 18 hours. Our families, our friends, everyone we've ever cared about will be dead before our main fleet can return. At least this way, we can give them some warning, maybe even buy them some time." She turned to address the entire bridge crew. "I won't order any of you to stay. Anyone who wants to take a shuttle and try to escape, you have my permission. No one will call you a coward." The bridge fell silent. No one moved toward the exit. Elena felt a surge of pride so strong it almost brought tears to her eyes. "All hands, battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the UNSC Indomitable. Today we stand between humanity and extinction. We may be outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed, but we are not outfought. Today we show these aliens what it means to face a human warship. Today we make them remember our names." The ship's battle alarm began to sound, and the crew moved to their positions with practiced efficiency. The Indomitable was a Crimson-class destroyer, built for speed and firepower. She carried magnetic rail cannons, nuclear missiles, and enough armor to survive most encounters with human enemies. Against alien technology, she was completely outmatched. "Tactical. What do our sensors tell us about their ship?" Elena asked. Lieutenant Sarah Kim studied her displays. "It's big, Captain. 2 kilometers long, heavily armored. The hull appears to be some kind of composite we've never seen before. Their weapons are charging particle cannons, probably antimatter-based. Weaknesses? Unknown, Captain. We've never fought anything like this before." Elena smiled grimly. "Then we'll have to figure it out as we go. Navigation, set intercept course. Full military power." "Captain," Marcus said urgently, "they're trying to hail us. Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled, and an alien voice spoke in a language that sounded like rocks grinding together. The ship's computer provided a translation in a flat, mechanical voice. "Human vessel, you will cease your approach and prepare to be destroyed. Your resistance is meaningless. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Elena looked around her, bridge at the determined faces of her crew. "Communications, open a channel." "Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Indomitable. I have a message for you and your fleet." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not kneel. If you want our worlds, you'll have to take them from us. And we promise you, the cost will be higher than you can imagine." She nodded to communications to close the channel, then turned to her tactical officer. "Time to weapons range? 90 seconds, Captain. All weapons. Target their forward sections. I want maximum damage with our first salvo. If we're only going to get one chance, let's make it count." The Indomitable raced toward the alien frigate at full speed. Elena could see it growing larger. On the main screen, its dark hull covered in weapons that were now glowing with deadly energy. Her ship's rail cannons were charging, building up the magnetic fields that would launch tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. "Weapons range in 10 seconds, Kim announced. Elena gripped the arms of her command chair. "All weapons, fire!" The Indomitable shuddered as her rail cannons discharged simultaneously. 6 tungsten projectiles, each weighing several tons, streaked across space at incredible velocity. At the same time, her missile batteries launched, sending a dozen nuclear warheads toward the alien ship. The alien frigate's response was immediate and devastating. Beams of coherent particles lashed out, intercepting most of the human missiles, and detonating them harmlessly in space. But the rail cannon shots were too fast to intercept. They slammed into the alien ship's hull with tremendous force. Elena watched in amazement as the alien ship's shields flared to life, absorbing most of the kinetic energy, but not all of it. Several of the tungsten slugs punched through, tearing holes in the alien hull. "Direct hits," Kim shouted. "We've penetrated their armor." But the alien ship was far from finished. Its particle cannons swiveled to track the Indomitable and fired in sequence. Beams of pure energy reached out across space, striking the human, destroyer shields and burning through them like paper. The bridge shook violently as the alien weapons found their target. Console displays exploded in showers of sparks, and the lights flickered as power systems overloaded. Hull breach on decks. 7 and 8, someone reported. "Shield generators are offline." Elena fought to stay in her chair as another barrage struck home. "Damage report! Forward armor is gone, Captain. We've lost main power to the rail cannons. Missile batteries are still operational. Then we use what we have. Emergency power to engines. Bring us around for another pass." Marcus looked at her with concern. "Captain, we can't take another hit like that." "Then we don't let them hit us again." Elena turned to navigation. "Plot a weaving course, maximum evasion, tactical. Prepare all remaining missiles for launch. We're going to get in close and hit them where it hurts." The Indomitable began a desperate dance with death, dodging and weaving as alien particle beams reached out to destroy her. Elena watched her crew work with fierce pride. They knew they were going to die, but they fought with everything they had. Another barrage struck the ship, and more systems failed. The artificial gravity flickered, and Elena felt herself floating for a moment before emergency systems kicked in. "Captain, I'm reading massive power signatures from the alien fleet," Kim reported. "They're accelerating toward Earth." Elena's heart sank. While they had been fighting this one ship, the main alien fleet had continued toward humanity's homeworld. Her sacrifice had bought Earth maybe an hour of warning time. It would have to be enough. "All missiles, fire everything we have left," she ordered. "Full spread, target their engines." The Indomitable launched her remaining nuclear warheads in one massive salvo. The alien frigate's defensive systems shot down most of them, but a few got through, exploding against the ship's rear hull. Elena saw the alien ship stagger as its engines took damage. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. Then the alien ship turned its full firepower on the Indomitable. Particle beams struck from multiple angles, overwhelming what was left of the human ship's defenses. The bridge filled with smoke and the screaming of torn metal. "Hull breach on all decks!" someone screamed. "Life support is failing!" Elena looked around her ruined bridge. Half her crew was down, and the other half was working frantically to keep their ship alive. She could feel the Indomitable dying around her. But they had hurt the alien ship, and more importantly, they had sent detailed sensor readings back to Earth. Humanity would know what they were facing. "Marcus," she said quietly to her first officer. "Yes, Captain? When you get to Earth, tell them how we died. Tell them we stood our ground." "Captain, I'm not leaving this ship." Elena smiled sadly. "Yes, you are. That's an order. Take what's left of the crew and abandon ship. Someone needs to survive to tell this story." Before Marcus could protest, Elena sealed the bridge blast doors and activated the ship's emergency beacon. Her remaining crew would have to evacuate, whether they wanted to or not. She was alone on the bridge when the alien ship fired its final salvo. Through the cracked view screen, she could see the particle beams racing toward her ship. In seconds, the Indomitable would be nothing but debris. Elena sat back in her command chair and smiled. She had done what she came here to do. She had stood between humanity and its enemies, and she had made the aliens pay for every meter of space. The particle beams struck home, and the UNSC Indomitable died in a burst of nuclear fire. But her sacrifice would echo across the galaxy. The first shot in a war that would teach the universe why humanity had survived every challenge their violent world had thrown at them. Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn stared at the expanding debris field where two ships had just died. The wreckage of the frigate Blood of Conquest tumbled slowly through space alongside the remains of the human vessel Indomitable. Both ships had been completely destroyed, their hulls torn apart by weapons fire and the final collision. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, a Krethan warship had been destroyed by primitive enemies. "Report," Thex Varn commanded, his voice carefully controlled. His tactical officer approached with obvious reluctance. "War Conductor, The blood of conquest is gone. All hands lost. The human ship rammed them after suffering critical damage. A ramming attack? Thex Varn could not hide his disbelief. They used their ship as a weapon? Yes, War Conductor. After their main guns were destroyed and their missiles exhausted, the human captain aimed directly at our frigate's reactor core. Both ships were destroyed in the resulting explosion. Thex Varn turned to study the tactical display. The debris field glowed with residual radiation from 2 destroyed reactors. In all his years of warfare, he had never seen such desperate tactics. Most species surrendered when faced with certain death. Others tried to escape. None had ever chosen mutual destruction. What of the human crew? He asked. Long-range sensors detected several escape pods, War Conductor. The human captain ordered her crew to abandon ship before the ramming attack. She stayed behind alone? Apparently so, War Conductor. Thex Varn felt something cold settle in his chest. The human captain had sacrificed herself and her ship to destroy one Crethan frigate. More disturbing, she had done it to save her crew, ordering them to escape while she remained behind to die. War Conductor, his intelligence officer interrupted. We are receiving transmissions from the inner system. Show me. The main display shifted to show the blue-green planet called Earth. Space around the world was suddenly alive with activity. Ships were emerging from hidden positions throughout the system, powering up weapons and moving to defensive positions. How many vessels? Thex Varn asked. Over 400 ships now active, War Conductor. They appear to have been hiding in asteroid fields and behind planetary bodies. Thex Varn studied the tactical display with growing unease. The humans had not been caught unprepared after all. They had been waiting, watching, using their single ship to buy time while their forces moved into position. What types of ships? Mixed composition, War Conductor. Some appear to be military vessels, but many are converted civilian craft. Cargo haulers, mining ships, even what appear to be passenger transports. They have all been armed. Civilian ships? Thex Varn had never encountered such tactics. Most species kept their military and civilian populations separate during warfare. The idea of arming merchant vessels and sending them into battle was alien to Crethan thinking. War Conductor, we are being hailed by multiple human vessels. Put them through. The bridge speakers filled with overlapping human voices, all speaking their primitive language simultaneously. The ship's computers struggled to translate the chaos of communications. Unknown alien vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have committed an act of war against humanity. Surrender now or face the consequences. This is Captain Rodriguez of the merchant vessel Lucky Strike. We've armed our cargo holds with mining charges. Try to take our world and we'll ram every one of your ships. Freighter New Horizons reporting for duty. My crew voted unanimously to fight. We're carrying a full load of antimatter for the Mars colonies. Anyone want to find out what happens when we detonate it near your fleet? Thex Varn listened to the stream of defiant messages with growing amazement. These were not trained soldiers speaking. They were merchants, miners, farmers, and civilians who had chosen to arm themselves and fight against impossible odds. War Conductor, his science officer approached nervously. I have completed analysis of the battle data from the Blood of Conquest. Report. The human ship's weapons were more effective than predicted. Their projectile weapons achieved multiple penetrations of our standard shielding. Their nuclear warheads, while primitive, caused significant damage to our armor. Thex Varn's red eyes narrowed. How is this possible? Our shields have protected us against every weapon we have encountered. The human weapons operate on different principles, War Conductor. Their magnetic accelerators launch solid projectiles at extreme velocity. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and slower-moving objects. These projectiles were too fast and too dense to stop completely. And their nuclear weapons? Crude but effective. They produce intense heat and radiation that our armor can absorb, but the explosions create massive kinetic force, multiple warheads striking the same area can breach our hull plating. Thex Varn absorbed this information with growing concern. The humans were technologically primitive, but their weapons were built on completely different principles than anything the hegemony had faced before. Worse, they had demonstrated a willingness to use those weapons even when facing certain death. War Conductor, the human fleet is moving to intercept us. Thex Varn looked at the tactical display. The human ships were indeed advancing, but not in any formation he recognized. Instead of organized battle lines, they came in clusters and groups, some ships racing ahead while others hung back. It looked like chaos. "They have no discipline," he observed. "Perhaps, War Conductor, but our tactical computers cannot predict their movements. They appear to be operating under individual command rather than fleet coordination." That was another disturbing development. Crethan fleets operated with perfect coordination, each ship following precise orders from the fleet commander. The human approach seemed random, unpredictable. It would be much harder to counter tactics that followed no logical pattern. "Begin the assault," Thex Varn ordered. "All ships, advance to battle positions. We will show these humans the price of defying the hegemony." The Crethan fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging for battle. As they approached the human defensive line, Thex Varn expected the enemy to break and run. Instead, the human ships accelerated toward them, weapons blazing. The first exchange of fire lit up space with deadly energy. Crethan particle beams lashed out at human vessels, while railgun slugs and nuclear missiles streaked back in response. Several human ships died quickly, overwhelmed by superior Crethan firepower, but others survived the initial barrage and closed to point-blank range, their weapons tearing into Crethan hulls. "War Conductor, the cruiser Eternal Victory reports severe damage. A human cargo vessel collided with their port side." "Collision?" Thex Varn demanded. The human ship was critically damaged but continued to approach. They rammed the cruiser's weapon arrays and detonated their reactor core. Another ramming attack. Thex Varn watched his tactical display in disbelief as the pattern repeated across the battlefield. Human ships that should have retreated when damaged instead pressed their attacks, using themselves as weapons when their guns failed. "War Conductor, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. Let me hear it." A new voice came over the speakers, speaking with calm authority despite the chaos of battle raging around them. "This is Admiral Chen to all human vessels. Remember the Indomitable. Remember Captain Vasquez. She stood alone so we would not have to. Today we fight for Earth, for humanity, and for every person who cannot fight for themselves. Make every shot count. Make every sacrifice mean something." The human fleet seemed to respond to these words with renewed fury. Ships that had been falling back suddenly turned and attacked with desperate courage. A damaged human frigate fired every missile it carried before ramming itself into a Crethan dreadnought. A converted mining ship used its drilling equipment to bore through enemy armor before exploding. "War Conductor," his tactical officer reported, "we have lost 7 ships. Enemy losses are 23 vessels, but they continue to attack. 7 ships lost. In 3,000 years of conquest, the hegemony had never lost 7 ships in a single battle, and the humans were still fighting, still dying, still refusing to surrender." Thex Varn studied the battle unfolding around him and realized that his understanding of warfare had been built on fighting civilized enemies. Enemies who calculated odds, who valued their lives, who knew when they were beaten. Humans apparently did not understand the concept of being beaten. They fought with the fury of cornered animals, using every weapon at their disposal and some that should not have been weapons at all. They turned cargo ships into missiles, mining equipment into weapons, and their own deaths into tactical advantages. "War Conductor, long-range sensors are detecting more human ships approaching from the outer system. How many? Unknown. They are approaching from multiple vectors, but early estimates suggest at least 200 additional vessels. Reinforcements. The humans had more ships coming. And if they fought with the same desperate courage as these defenders, the battle would become even more costly." For the first time in his long career, Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn began to wonder if the hegemony had chosen the wrong enemy to conquer. The battle for Earth had been raging for 6 hours when Admiral Sarah Chen received the message she had been praying for. The main human fleet was returning from Proxima Centauri, and they were not coming alone. "Admiral," her communications officer called out from the bridge of the EDF Defiance, "Incoming transmission from Fleet Admiral Morrison. Put him through!" The scarred face of Fleet Admiral James Morrison appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see the bridge of his flagship buzzing with activity. "Sarah, we've got your distress signal. What's your status?" "Jim, we're holding them, but just barely. We've lost 40 ships, and the aliens have only lost 12. They're wearing us down. Not for much longer. We've got every ship in the outer colonies with us. The merchant marine, colonial defense forces, even the pirates from the asteroid belt decided to join the party. Everyone who could hold a gun is coming to help. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. How many ships? 300 and counting. Oh, and Sarah? Captain Marcus Chen sends his regards. Apparently his sister went down fighting on the Indomitable. He's very eager to repay the favor. Sarah knew Marcus Chen by reputation. Elena Vasquez's former first officer had been promoted to command the UNSC Retribution, sister ship to the fallen Indomitable. If anyone could make the aliens pay for Elena's death, it would be him. ETA on the fleet? She asked. 20 minutes. Think you can hold out that long? Sarah looked at her tactical display. The alien fleet was slowly grinding down her defenses, but her ships were making them pay dearly for every victory. More importantly, her people had learned to fight these enemies. They had figured out how to penetrate alien shields, how to damage their armor, and how to make every shot count. We'll be here when you arrive, Jim. Count on it. The reinforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace in waves, their arrival announced by the distinctive flashes of ships returning to normal space. Sarah watched her tactical display fill with friendly contacts and felt hope surge through her chest. But it was not just the number of ships that amazed her. It was who was flying them. The heavy cruiser New Sydney led the colonial defense forces from the outer settlements. The massive cargo hauler Iron Mountain had been converted into a weapons platform, its holds filled with railguns and missile launchers. Even the notorious pirate vessel Black Fortune flew in formation with the fleet, its crew apparently deciding that fighting aliens was more profitable than raiding merchant ships. Admiral Chen, came a familiar voice over the communications channel. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Retribution. Permission to engage the enemy? Permission granted, Marcus. Make them pay for your sister. The UNSC Retribution accelerated toward the alien fleet with lethal intent. Marcus Chen had spent the 3-day journey from Proxima Centauri studying every piece of data his sister had died to provide. He knew exactly how to kill alien ships now. The Retribution opened fire with its full armament, but these were not the same desperate, improvised attacks the aliens had faced earlier. Marcus Chen had learned from Elena's sacrifice. His railgun, shots were precisely targeted at weak points in alien armor. His missiles followed complex attack patterns designed to overwhelm enemy defenses. The alien frigate that tried to intercept the Retribution lasted less than 2 minutes. Chen's concentrated firepower tore through its shields and hull, leaving it a drifting wreck. This is for the Indomitable, Chen transmitted on all frequencies as his ship moved to engage its next target. Across the battlefield, the arrival of human reinforcements changed everything. Fresh ships with full ammunition, stores, and undamaged weapons joined the fight. More importantly, these were ships whose crews had spent days traveling to Earth, thinking about the battle to come and preparing for it. Captain Rosa Martinez commanded the converted cargo hauler Star Trader. Her ship had been carrying mining equipment to the outer colonies when the call for help came. Now those mining charges were packed into missile warheads, and her cargo manipulator arms had been fitted with magnetic railguns. All ships, this is Martinez on the Star Trader. I've got a full hold of antimatter mining charges. Anyone want to see what happens when I ram one of those big alien ships? Negative, Star Trader, Admiral Chen responded. We've learned better. Tactics than ramming. Target their engine sections with your mining charges. Let's see how they handle industrial explosives. The Star Trader launched its improvised missiles at an alien cruiser. The mining charges were designed to crack asteroids, not damage warships, but they carried enough explosive power to breach alien armor when used correctly. The cruiser staggered under the assault, its rear sections venting atmosphere and debris. Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn watched the battle turn against his forces with growing alarm. The arrival of human reinforcements had not just increased their numbers, it had improved their tactics dramatically. These new human ships fought with deadly precision, their weapons targeting specific systems rather than firing wildly. War Conductor, we have lost 19 ships, his tactical officer reported. Enemy losses are 67 vessels, but their reinforcements continue to arrive. 19 ships. The hegemony had never lost so many vessels in a single battle. More disturbing, The humans were learning how to fight them more effectively with each passing hour. War Conductor, his science officer approached with obvious fear. The humans have adapted their targeting systems. They are concentrating fire on our shield generators and weapon arrays. Thex Varn studied the tactical display. The human ships were indeed changing their tactics, no longer firing randomly, but targeting specific systems with surgical precision. They had learned to recognize Krethan ship designs and identify weak points. How is this possible? They have fought us for only hours. The humans appear to share tactical data between all their ships in real time, War Conductor. When one vessel discovers an effective attack method, all human ships immediately adopt the same tactics. This was unprecedented. Most species fought with rigid military doctrines that took years to change. The humans were adapting their entire battle strategy, in the middle of combat, learning from every exchange of fire. War Conductor, the Dreadnought Conquest Eternal is requesting assistance. They are under attack by multiple human vessels. Thex Varn looked at the tactical display and felt his confidence crack. The Conquest Eternal was one of his most powerful ships, capable of destroying entire planetary defense fleets. Now it was being overwhelmed by a coordinated attack from 6 human vessels, including 2 converted cargo ships. The human ships had learned to work together, combining their different weapon systems for maximum effect. Fast destroyers drew the dreadnought's fire, while slower cargo haulers moved into position to launch mining charges at close range. When the dreadnought tried to target the cargo ships, human cruisers would open fire on its weapon arrays. War Conductor, I am detecting massive energy readings from the human fleet, his sensor officer reported. They appear to be charging some kind of weapon. Show me. The main display focused on a cluster of human ships that had formed up behind the main battle line. These were not warships, but industrial vessels, their hulls marked with corporate logos and mining company emblems. They had arranged themselves in a precise formation and were channeling power between their ships. What are they doing? Thex Varn demanded. Unknown, War Conductor. The energy readings suggest they are linking their reactor cores somehow. Before Thex Varn could process this information fully, the human industrial ships fired in unison. But instead of individual weapons, they had created a single massive beam by linking their ship's power systems together. The combined energy lance reached across space and struck the Conquest Eternal directly in its forward sections. The dreadnought's shields flared and failed under the concentrated assault. The beam burned through its armor plating and deep into its hull, cutting the massive ship nearly in half. Secondary explosions rippled through its structure as critical systems overloaded. The Conquest Eternal, pride of the Krethan fleet, died in a cascade of fire and escaping atmosphere. Impossible, Thex Varn whispered. They turned mining equipment into a fleet weapon. The human innovation was beyond anything he had encountered. They had taken ships designed for asteroid mining and cargo transport, linked them together, and created a weapon capable of destroying a dreadnought. No military doctrine had prepared him for enemies who could improvise such tactics in the middle of battle. War Conductor, we are receiving surrender terms from the human fleet. They wish to surrender? For a moment, Thex Varn felt relief. No. War Conductor, they are offering us terms for our surrender. The bridge fell silent. In 3,000 years of conquest, no enemy had ever offered the hegemony surrender terms. Put them through. Admiral Sarah Chen's voice filled the bridge, speaking with calm authority despite the chaos of battle surrounding her fleet. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have attacked our system without provocation and murdered our people. However, we are prepared to allow your surviving ships to withdraw if you agree to the following terms. Immediate cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from human space, and payment of reparations for the damage you have caused. The hegemony fleet withdrew from human space in disorder, their perfect formations broken by ships limping away with critical damage. Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as his forces retreated. Behind them, the human fleet maintained formation but did not pursue. They were content to see the invaders leave. The cost of the withdrawal was staggering. 47 Krethan ships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Nearly 30,000 of his finest warriors were dead. The humans had lost 63 vessels, but their casualties seemed to mean nothing to them. For every ship destroyed, 2 more had taken its place. War Conductor, His intelligence officer approached with obvious reluctance. I have completed the battle analysis. Report. The humans demonstrated tactical adaptation capabilities beyond anything in our databases. They modified their strategies 17 times during the engagement, each time becoming more effective against our forces. Thex Varn nodded grimly. He had witnessed that adaptation firsthand. Human ships that had fired wildly at the beginning of the battle were making precision strikes by the end. They had learned to target Krethan shield generators, weapon arrays, and engine sections with deadly accuracy. More concerning, War Conductor, is their weapon innovation. They converted industrial equipment into military systems during the battle itself. Mining charges became warheads. Cargo manipulators became weapons platforms. They even linked civilian reactor cores to create heavy beam weapons. What does this suggest about their military potential? The intelligence officer hesitated. War Conductor, if they can achieve this level of innovation with civilian equipment, their purpose-built military technology will be significantly more dangerous. We recommend avoiding human space indefinitely. Thex Varn absorbed this recommendation with something like disbelief. The hegemony of Kreth had never retreated from a conquest. They had never added a species to their list of worlds to avoid. In 3,000 years, no enemy had ever forced them to change their expansion plans. War Conductor, his communications. Officer interrupted. We are receiving a transmission from the Hegemony Council. Thex Varn straightened his uniform and activated the holographic display. The 5 members of the Hegemony Council appeared before him, their stone-like faces showing no emotion as always. But he could sense their displeasure in the way they held themselves. Supreme War Conductor, the first council spoke in a voice, like grinding metal, explained the failure at the human system. Honored counselors, the humans proved to be unlike any species we have previously encountered. They demonstrated tactical innovation, technological adaptation, and combat determination that exceeded all predictions. You retreated from primitives, retreated from an enemy that destroyed 47 of our ships and showed no signs of stopping. Honored counselors, the humans fight with a ferocity and desperation that breaks our warriors' morale. They use tactics that no military doctrine prepared us to counter. The second council member leaned forward. Explain these tactics. They use their own ships as weapons, honored counselor. When their guns fail, they ram our vessels. When their military ships are destroyed, they arm civilian craft and send them into battle. They converted mining equipment into fleet weapons during the engagement itself. Ramming attacks? Suicide tactics? Not suicide, honored counselor. Sacrifice. They calculate that trading one of their ships for one of ours is an acceptable exchange, even though our vessels are superior. They have no concept of preserving their forces for future battles. The council members exchanged glances that Thex Varn could not interpret. Finally, the first council spoke again. What is your recommendation regarding the human species? Thex Varn had prepared for this question during the long journey away from human space. His answer would shape the hegemony's policy for generations to come. Honored counselors, I recommend that humanity be classified as a forbidden target. They should be avoided by all hegemony forces and removed from our expansion plans. A forbidden target? The third council member sounded incredulous. We have never classified any species as forbidden. With respect, honored counselor, we have never encountered a species like humanity. They are not just dangerous because of their weapons or tactics. They are dangerous because of what they are. They convert every tool into a weapon, every citizen into a soldier, every retreat into a tactical repositioning. Fighting them is like fighting a force of nature. Thex Varn paused, gathering his thoughts. More importantly, they learn. Every battle makes them stronger. Every engagement teaches them new ways to kill us. If we continue to fight them, they will eventually develop weapons and tactics that can threaten the hegemony itself. You are suggesting that primitives could threaten our empire? Honored counselors, they are not primitives. They are simply different. Their technology follows different principles than ours. Their weapons use kinetic force instead of energy, solid projectiles instead of particle beams. Our defenses were not designed to stop such attacks. The fourth council member spoke for the first time. What of their expansion potential? They are contained to a small region of space, honored counselor. Their territory is insignificant compared to our empire. But if we leave them alone, they will likely remain in their current systems. If we attack them again, they will be forced to expand to find resources for their war effort. You are suggesting we ignore them? I am suggesting we learn from them. Honored Counselor, study their tactics, understand their technology, but avoid direct confrontation. Let them develop in isolation while we continue our conquests elsewhere. The council deliberated in silence for several minutes. Finally, the First Council rendered their decision. Supreme War Conductor Thex Varn, your recommendation is accepted. Humanity will be classified as a forbidden target. All hegemony forces are to avoid human space. This information will be transmitted to other powers in the galaxy. The transmission ended, leaving Thex Varn alone with his thoughts. He had just convinced the most powerful empire in the galaxy to avoid a species that barely controlled a dozen star systems. The irony was not lost on him, but he had made the right choice. He had seen what humans could do when cornered, and he had no desire to face them again. Let other species learn that lesson for themselves. 3 months later, construction began on a memorial station at the coordinates where the UNSC Indomitable had made its final stand. Ships from across human space came to pay their respects to Captain Elena Vasquez and her crew. The memorial bore a simple inscription. She stood alone so that none of us would have to. Admiral Sarah Chen attended the dedication ceremony along with Captain Marcus Chen and the survivors of Earth's defense. As she looked out at the gathered ships, she felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Humanity had won its first interstellar war, but the cost had been enormous. Admiral, one of her officers approached. We're receiving reports from our deep space monitoring stations. Several alien empires have sent diplomatic messages. They want to establish peaceful contact with humanity. Sarah nodded. News of the battle had apparently spread throughout the galaxy. Other species wanted to know more about the newcomers who had defeated the seemingly invincible hegemony of Kreth. What's our response going to be? The officer asked. Sarah looked back at the memorial station, thinking of Elena Vasquez and all the others who had died to protect humanity's freedom. We tell them the truth, she said finally. We're a peaceful species that wants to explore the galaxy and make friends with our neighbors. But we also make sure they understand one thing. We will never surrender our freedom, and we will never stop fighting for what's ours. In the depths of space, the message was already spreading. The galaxy had learned about humanity's courage at the battle for Earth. Some species, like the Krathans, chose to avoid these dangerous newcomers. Others reached out in friendship, curious about a species that could fight so fiercely when threatened. But all of them remembered the same lesson. Worlds might fall before mighty fleets and advanced weapons, but sometimes a single ship, crewed by beings willing to stand their ground, could change the course of history. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its presence not with words or diplomacy, but with the thunder of railguns and the sacrifice of those willing to die for their beliefs. They had shown the universe what it meant to be human, to stand against impossible odds, to adapt and overcome any challenge, and to never, ever surrender what they held dear. The stars themselves seemed to take notice. In a galaxy that had grown accustomed to the strong conquering the weak, humanity offered something different. They proved that courage, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice for others could triumph over superior technology and overwhelming numbers. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget.